My sister sold her house to travel with no plan. Now she's broke, and my parents are pressuring me to let her move in with me. Despite our humble beginnings, I made a significant move that went unnoticed by my family. For the past 10 years, I've been steadily paying off this home. And now, at last, it's truly mine. It's not a lavish estate, just a simple 3-bedroom house. But the feeling of ownership is immense. You know that satisfaction when you've poured your effort into something, and you can finally just take a moment and realize, yes, I achieved this. That's exactly where I am. I haven't filled it with elaborate decorations or a sprawling garden, but it's a pleasant space. Comfortable, peaceful, and most importantly, it's my sanctuary. It's a place where I can truly unwind without any pressure. Then there's my sister, Jenny, who is 29, married to Alex, 31. They fit the description of free spirits, always vocal about how others are merely existing in the daily grind of typical jobs while they embrace their best lives or whatever their philosophy is. This attitude has been consistent since they became a couple, perpetually plotting grand escapes from the conventional routine. Honestly, I never thought they would actually follow through. I mean, everyone fantasizes about leaving their job and exploring the world, right? It feels like a phase you outgrow once you confront the reality of expenses. But not Jenny and Alex. They truly committed. They sold their residence, the actual home where their 2 children, Emma, 7, and Lucas, 5, had spent their entire lives, and decided to embark on a year-long global journey. Yes, you heard correctly. They liquidated everything for what they considered a dream vacation, believing the real estate market was thriving, and they'd profit handsomely from the sale. Their plan was to sustain themselves with that money, taking on occasional odd jobs, and extending their travels for a full year, moving from one place to another. So, as I observed all this from my own modest dwelling, I thought, well, good. For them. But also, this is ill-advised. They have 2 young children, and traveling with kids isn't like impromptu backpacking through Europe. It requires thorough preparation. Yet, they simply brushed off my concerns, saying they'd sort things out as they went, and I just thought, all right, it's your life. A few months later, I was relaxing at home, probably watching TV, when I received a call from Jenny. I hadn't heard much from her since they left, just the occasional Instagram update about how wonderful life was and some photos of them trying exotic food in various locations. So I assumed this call would be another one of her bragging sessions, but the moment I answered, I could tell something was off. Jenny sounded incredibly stressed. She began explaining how things hadn't gone as planned. Apparently, they had depleted their funds much faster than anticipated. Within 2 months, they were practically broke. It turns out that global travel is indeed expensive. Who would have thought? They stayed in luxurious accommodations, dined at restaurants, and simply lived as if they had an endless supply of cash. But when you're not earning and continuously spending, money doesn't last, especially with 2 children. Hostels and budget Airbnbs are enjoyable until you have 2 tired, hungry kids who need a consistent, stable place to sleep every night. Now they're stranded. They can't continue traveling because they're out of money. But they also don't want to settle down and buy another house just yet. So guess what? They asked if they could move in with me. Yes, Jenny, Alex, and their 2 children, all into my 3-bedroom house for 10 months. And here's the kicker. They want to stay rent-free. They didn't even offer to contribute. They just straight up said, hey, can we live with you for almost a year while we figure things out? I have to admit, I didn't know how to respond at first. I mean, she's my sister, and yes, I care about her, but this is my house, my personal space. I didn't work tirelessly for 10 years, just to have 4 additional people move in and take over the place. Plus, I have my routine. I value my peace and quiet. I can't even imagine what my house would be like with 2 young children running around. Not to mention the potential mess. So, I told her, look, Jenny, I love you guys, but this simply isn't going to work. The house is too small and I don't want that kind of disruption. I even offered to help them find an affordable rental nearby or contribute some money for a couple of months to help them get back on their feet. But no, that wasn't sufficient. Jenny immediately became furious. She started calling me selfish, saying I didn't care about family and that I was jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. Jealous? Really? At that point, I started getting angry too. It wasn't about jealousy or a lack of familial care. It was about establishing boundaries. I don't owe them a place to live just because they made some foolish decisions and failed to plan thoroughly. I understand that life doesn't always go as planned, but they sold their house without a backup plan, and now they expect me to bear the consequences. And here's where it gets even better. After Jenny exploded at me, she involved our parents. My parents live in a tiny apartment, so they can't accommodate Jenny's family, but instead of understanding my perspective, they started pressuring me to let them move in. My mom began lecturing me about how family helps family, and that I should be more understanding of Jenny and Alex's situation. She told me I didn't grasp the value of experiences, and that I should be supportive. Supportive? I offered them support. I offered to help them find a rental or cover part of their expenses for a couple of months. But that's not enough. They want the complete package: free rent, my house, and my personal space for almost a year. And the worst part is, they're not even planning to settle down. They're still talking about taking occasional trips if they find cheap deals. So, essentially, they want to live in my house rent-free while still being free-spirited travelers whenever they feel like it. How does that make any sense? So now I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to deal with the fallout. Jenny isn't speaking to me. My parents are upset with me, and even some of our mutual friends are saying I'm being too harsh. But I don't believe I'm in the wrong here. It's not like I'm kicking them while they're down. I offered to help in other ways. I just don't want them living in my house rent-free for 10 months. After that initial awkward phone call with my sister Jenny, I somewhat anticipated things would become strange, but I was completely unprepared for how chaotic it would actually get. I had imagined I could just assert myself, tell her no, and that would be the end of it. Simply draw the line and move on. But no, Jenny and Alex decided to show up at my house in person about a week later. They didn't even give me a heads up, which already put me on edge. So I was just going about my usual Saturday morning, enjoying the peace and quiet, when the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there stood Jenny with Alex and the kids. They had this hopeful expression on their faces, as if I were about to be their savior. Meanwhile, I was just thinking, oh man, here we go. I mean, I knew what they were going to ask, but I didn't expect it to be like this. Them just showing up as if it were a done deal. Jenny started with small talk, asking how I was doing, how work was going, all the usual pleasantries. But I could feel the tension in the air. I knew they weren't just there to chat. It was like that moment when someone is clearly buttering you up for something significant, and I was just standing there trying to remain polite, but also bracing myself for what was to come. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Alex cleared his throat and interjected. He said, "So, Brian, we've been thinking about what you said on the phone." Then Jenny took over, because, of course, she's the one orchestrating things in their relationship. She said something like, "We know you said you didn't think having us live here would work out, but we truly believe we can make it happen. It's only 10 months. We won't be any trouble. The kids are well behaved, they'll stay out of your way, and we'll keep everything tidy." I just stood there for a moment, unsure how to respond. Because let's be realistic. There's no way two young children are going to stay out of my way in a house this size. And the idea that they're just going to magically not disrupt my life? Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. I tried to stay calm, though. I didn't want to lose my temper immediately. So I asked, "What's the plan, though? I mean, what happens after the 10 months? Are you going to get another house? What about work?" Jenny and Alex exchanged glances as if they hadn't really considered this. Then Jenny said, "We're still figuring that part out. We might go back to traveling if things work out. We've been checking for cheap flight deals, and there's a chance we could get back on the road by the end of the year. We just need a place to regroup, somewhere to stay while we figure out our next move." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So not only did they want to crash at my place for 10 months, but they were also still talking about taking more trips. Like, really? You're broke, you've got 2 kids, and your big plan is to keep living this fantasy life where you're just drifting from place to place? I didn't even know what to say. I mean, where's the logic in that? So I tried to be as polite as possible. And I told them, "Look, I understand you guys are in a tough spot, but I'm really not comfortable with this. It's not about not wanting to help you out. It's just that my house isn't set up for that. I've got my own routine, and honestly, I don't think having you all here for 10 months would work for anyone. The house is too small, and there's just not enough space. That's when Jenny's face changed. She went from hopeful to furious in about 2 seconds flat. Are you serious? She said, crossing her arms. We're family, Brian. Family helps each other out. You've got all this space, and it's just you living here. What's the big deal? Now I was starting to get frustrated. I mean, I get it. They're stressed. But this whole thing was beginning to feel like they thought they were entitled to my space just because we share the same blood. I tried to stay calm and explain. It's not just about space, Jenny. It's about my life, too. I've worked really hard to get this house, and I need my own peace and quiet. I'm happy to help you in other ways, but having you all live here for almost a year? I just don't see that working. Alex finally stepped in, probably sensing that things were getting heated. He was trying to play peacemaker, saying, maybe we can work something out? What if we helped around the house? We could do chores, cook meals, whatever you need, and we'll be out during the day. You won't even notice we're here. But here's the thing. Of course, I'd notice 4 extra people living in my house. Yeah, I'm definitely going to notice. Plus, the idea of them being out during the day didn't make any sense. They've got 2 small kids. Where are they even going to go? They're broke. It's not like they can afford to just take the kids on daily outings. I shook my head and said, I appreciate the offer, but no, I just can't do it. Sorry. And that's when Jenny lost it. She started ranting about how I've always been stingy, and how I don't understand what it means to truly live. She said I've never taken any risks, that I'm just a boring guy with a boring life, and that I'm probably jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. Yeah, she went there. Now I was angry, but I tried not to show it. I just said, Jenny, this isn't about me being jealous or anything like that. It's about boundaries. You guys made your choice to sell your house and live this lifestyle. That's fine. But now you're asking me to take responsibility for it, and that's not fair. She wasn't having it. We wouldn't be asking if we had any other option, she argued. You think we want to be here begging for help? No, but this is what family does, Brian. They help each other out when things get tough. I thought you of all people would get that. At this point, Alex just looked uncomfortable. He wasn't saying much anymore, just staring at the floor while Jenny continued to rant about how I was selfish and heartless. She was talking about how they're inspired by their travels and how they don't want to settle for the typical suburban life. And all I could think was, yeah, but you need money for all of that, don't you? Finally, I just said, look, I'm sorry, but my answer is still, no. I can't have you guys living here, it's just not going to work. They stormed out after that, Jenny muttering something about how they'd figure it out without my help. And honestly, I was relieved. I didn't want to keep arguing, but I could already tell this wasn't the end of it. And yeah, it wasn't, because after they left, things escalated way more than I expected. So after Jenny and Alex stormed out of my place, I genuinely thought that was the end of it. Maybe they'd cool off, come to their senses, and realize they were the ones who made a mess. But I was incredibly wrong. A couple of days later, the real fallout began. I was at home, enjoying my usual routine, when I got a call from my mom. Normally, when my mom calls, it's just to check in or ask if I've been eating enough vegetables. Seriously. But I could tell immediately that this call wasn't going to be one of those. She started off with, Brian, I need to talk to you about Jenny. And that's when I knew I was in for a wild ride. Apparently, Jenny went straight to our parents after leaving my house. She gave them her whole sob story about how I refused to help them when they were down and out. And of course, she framed it in a way that made me look like the villain. My mom's voice was filled with disappointment, as if I had kicked a puppy or something. And she said, I don't understand why you wouldn't help your sister, Brian. They're in a tough spot, and family is supposed to help each other. I tried to keep calm, but inside, I was already annoyed. I explained to her what really happened. How I offered to help them find a rental, even give them some money to get back on their feet. But they just wanted to move in with me for 10 months, rent-free. I told her how their whole plan was ridiculous, how they blew all their money without thinking things through, and now they expected me to bail them out. But my mom, of course, didn't see it that way. They made a mistake, Brian, but they're still family. You have the space, It wouldn't be forever, just long enough for them to figure things out. Here's the thing, though. My mom has this way of making you feel guilty without even intending to. She's not mean or anything, but she's always dropping these subtle comments that make you feel like you're failing at being a good son or brother. It's exhausting. But this time, I wasn't having it. I told her straight up, "Mom, I'm not doing it. I love Jenny, but she and Alex need to take responsibility for their choices. It's not my job to let them crash at my place because they didn't plan." She didn't like that answer, but she let it go for now. I thought we were done with the conversation, but oh no, it was just getting started. Because the next day, my dad called. Now my dad's a different story. He's not the guilt trip type. He's more the tough love type, which means when he's mad, you hear about it. He gets straight to the point, no sugarcoating. "Brian," he said, "I hear you've been giving your sister a hard time." I tried to explain myself again, but he cut me off, going on about how I'm being selfish and how I've always been the one who has it easy. Yeah, right. Like working my butt off for 10 years to pay off this house is easy. He started ranting about how Jenny's always been the one taking risks, living her life to the fullest, and I'm just sitting here comfortable, not doing anything exciting. He was basically saying I'm being a coward for not letting them stay, like I'm some kind of stick in the mud who doesn't understand what it's like to truly live. At this point, I was getting heated. I told him, "Dad, this isn't about being adventurous, or not. It's about them making a bad decision and expecting me to clean it up. I worked hard for this house, and I'm not going to let them come in and take advantage of that." But he wasn't hearing it. He kept going on about how I'm the one who's in the position to help and how I'm failing as a brother by not stepping up. It was like he was taking everything Jenny said and running with it, making me out to be the bad guy in this whole situation. And honestly, that hurt. I've always been the responsible one in the family, the one who's worked hard, kept my head down, and did what I needed to do. But now it felt like none of that mattered. After that call, I was fuming. I felt like I was getting attacked from all sides. My parents were both mad at me, and Jenny was probably out there telling everyone I'm a heartless jerk. And guess what? That's exactly what was happening. A few hours later, I got a message from one of our mutual friends. Let's call him Tom. Tom's a good guy, but he's also friends with Jenny, so he'd heard her side of the story. He texted me, "Hey man, what's going on with you and Jenny? She says you're not letting her family stay with you even though they're in trouble." I explained my side to him, how it's not that simple, how they're asking for way too much, and how I've already offered other ways to help. And Tom, being the reasonable guy he is, listened, but then he hit me with, "Yeah, but it's just for a little while, right? You could tough it out for 10 months. It's family, dude." And now I was just done. It was like everyone had forgotten that I have a right to say no, like my house wasn't even mine anymore. It was just a resource that everyone thought they were entitled to. I was frustrated because no matter how I explained it, everyone seemed to think I was being unreasonable. They all kept acting like it was no big deal for me to let a whole family move in and turn my life upside down for almost a year. Then the final blow came when Jenny herself texted me. It wasn't a long message, but it hit hard. She just said, "I can't believe you've turned your back on us. We really needed you." Now I was sitting there staring at my phone, feeling torn. Part of me felt guilty, like maybe I should have just given in to avoid all this drama. But another part of me was still standing firm. I knew I wasn't in the wrong here. It wasn't my fault they made bad choices, and it wasn't fair for them to dump their problems on me just because I have a house. Still, the guilt was eating away at me, and I was starting to wonder if I could have handled things differently. Maybe I should have been softer in my response. Maybe I should have been more understanding. But at the same time, I knew that giving in would have just enabled them to keep making these reckless decisions, thinking they can always rely on someone else to fix things. So yeah, now I'm stuck. My parents are mad at me. Jenny's upset. And even some of our friends are questioning whether I did the right thing. And me? I'm just trying to hold on to the fact that I set a boundary for myself, even though it feels like the whole world is telling me I'm wrong for doing it. But this is far from over, because as much as I want to just walk away from all the drama, Jenny isn't done yet. All right, so after the whole family explosion, and the influx of messages from all directions, I was ready to just disconnect for a while, like, turn off my phone, lock the doors, and just wait for the storm to pass. But no, of course things weren't going to calm down. If anything, they were about to reach a whole new level of ridiculousness. A couple of days went by, and I hadn't heard directly from Jenny or Alex, which I suppose should have been a relief. But honestly, it made me feel like something big was brewing. You know that quiet before a major argument? That's what it felt like. I could just tell that they weren't done with me yet. Sure enough, one morning, I woke up to find this massive post on Facebook that Jenny had written. And of course, it was public, so everyone and their dog could see it. She was going off about how some people in the family, obviously me, had abandoned her in her time of need, how she and her kids were basically one step away from being homeless, and how all they wanted was a little support from someone who's in a position of privilege. The post was full of dramatic language, talking about how certain family members are selfish and don't understand the importance of helping each other out when things get tough. And, yeah, the comment section, it was a total mess. People were jumping in, saying how heartless it is to turn away family, how they can't believe someone would do that to their own sister. I was reading all this and just feeling my blood boil, because these people don't even know half the story. They're just devouring whatever Jenny is feeding them, and suddenly, I'm public enemy number one. What's worse is that a bunch of our extended family was in the comments too. My aunt, who I haven't spoken to in years, was chiming in with, "I always knew Brian was selfish," as if this were some well-known fact about me. My cousins were sharing the post, and suddenly I was getting notifications left and right about how I needed to step up and do the right thing. At this point, I was fuming. I tried to calm down and think rationally. But the more I scrolled through the comments, the angrier I got. It was like no matter how much I've explained my side to people, Jenny had managed to twist the story so that I looked like the villain. And honestly, it was working. I was losing the public battle here. So I made a decision. I'm not usually the type to air my dirty laundry online, but this had gone too far. If Jenny was going to drag me through the mud on Facebook, I was going to set the record straight. I typed out a long post in response, explaining my side of the story. How I offered to help Jenny and Alex in other ways, how they were the ones who demanded to live rent-free for nearly a year, and how I simply can't accommodate them because it's unreasonable. I mentioned that they've been irresponsible with their money, that they've been trying to guilt-trip me into giving up my house, and how this whole situation is their fault, not mine. I hit post and waited, and man, did the fireworks start immediately. People were commenting on my post, some siding with me saying it's not my responsibility to take in Jenny and her family. Others, of course, still backing Jenny, saying I'm being too harsh and that families should stick together no matter what. It was turning into this full-blown argument in the comments section, with people going back and forth, defending one side or the other. Jenny, of course, saw my post and flipped out. She started messaging me directly, calling me every name in the book, selfish, heartless, arrogant. She said I was destroying the family and that she couldn't believe I would embarrass her like this, in front of everyone. The irony of her saying that after she dragged me publicly first was just too much. I tried to keep my cool and respond calmly. I told her that she left me no choice, that I had to defend myself after she blasted me on Facebook. But she wasn't hearing any of it. She was too wrapped up in her own narrative, convinced that she was the victim here. Eventually, she blocked me on Facebook like we were teenagers or something, which was honestly fine by me. Less drama I have to deal with. But just when I thought things might finally start to die down, I got a call from my dad. Here we go again, right? He wasn't yelling this time, but his voice was low and serious, which was worse in a way. He was disappointed. He said he saw the whole thing on Facebook, and he was upset that I took it public. He was mad that I didn't just handle it privately, and that now the whole family was divided. I could tell he was blaming me for making the situation worse, but I tried to explain that I was backed into a corner. That Jenny started this whole thing by attacking me first, but no matter what I said, he wasn't happy. He started talking about how I needed to make things right, how family is the most important thing, and how it's not too late to offer Jenny and Alex a place to stay. He said, if I do that, maybe things can go back to normal, and here's where I finally snapped. I told him, Dad, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to let them live with me, and I'm done apologizing for it. I've done nothing wrong. They made their choices, and now they have to deal with the consequences. I'm not their safety net, and it's not my job to fix their problems. He went quiet for a moment, and I could tell he was shocked. I don't usually stand up to him like this, but I was done. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into doing something I don't want to do just to keep the peace. Finally, he sighed and said, "I hope you know what you're doing, Brian." Then he hung up. After that, things went quiet. Jenny still has me blocked on social media, and my parents aren't really talking to me either. It feels like the whole family is in this weird, tense standoff, waiting for someone to make the next move. But here's the thing. I'm not making the next move. I've done my part. I've stood my ground, and I'm not backing down. It sucks that things had to turn out this way. I never wanted to fight with my family. But at the same time, I know I did the right thing. I set a boundary and I stuck to it, even when it felt like the whole world was against me. And yeah, maybe the family dynamic is messed up now, and maybe things won't go back to the way they were. But honestly, I'm okay with that. Because at least I know I'm living on my own terms, in my own house, without anyone trying to guilt me into giving that up. And that, for me, is worth all the drama.